I've shot my last several videos using my iPhone 11 Pro, and I wanted to make a video where I'm just kind of talking about what the experience has been like using my phone for all of my videos on YouTube versus using something like the Sony a6400, a mirrorless camera. So let's get into it. Greetings, Aqua fam. It has been Aqua. My last several videos were made using only my iPhone 11 Pro. And in short, it's really opened up a lot of possibilities for me creatively, and the quality of the video on the 11 Pro is just so good that it made me just feel like, why am I even using a bigger camera? And I was just kind of reflecting on how the experience of creation has changed since I've been using just my phone versus using a bigger mirrorless camera that I'm shooting on right now. The biggest thing I noticed in just the overall aesthetic and visual quality of my videos using my phone is the quality is really good. It's really crisp, but I don't get much blur in the background. And what does that mean really for the context of what I do as a creator? I've been thinking about this whole thing about having a blurry background, having so-called cinematic look to your video. And I'm kind of just like, why does everything need to be cinematic for it to be powerful? Definitely think the cinematic thing has been a weird YouTube trend that I've kind of been a part of, but kind of not. I kind of joke at it a little bit, but then I also use some of those techniques because it just looks freaking fantastic. But I also don't want to be one of those people that just thinks that because there's a blurry background, it's automatically cinematic or it automatically is somehow better than something that is super sharp like an iPhone. I think the iPhone, actually I know that the iPhone is 100% capable of making so-called cinematic video. First of all, it has great stabilization, so if you want to do some kind of pans and stuff, it's just super smooth. The overall quality is really good. It shoots 4K up to 60p. I usually shoot all my videos at 24 frames per second because it's cinematic. I don't know if it looks cinematic, I just like the way it looks kind of more film-like and it has more of a kind of mystery to it aesthetically. Is that a thing? It is now. But yeah, the quality is great on the iPhone 11 Pro, but it does have a couple big flaws to me, especially when I'm shooting outdoors or when I'm shooting in a really high contrast environment. It does this weird auto HDR thing with video that you can't turn off in settings. You can turn off HDR for photos, but you can't turn it off for video on the 11 Pro. I've talked about this in videos before, but basically what it does is it creates these kind of like ghosting images, these kind of areas of dark and light, and it'll kind of flicker, and I don't know, hashtag flickergate. I don't think it looks good at all. But for stuff like this where I just have like a camera on a tripod and nothing really changes that much, it does a really good job of that. So one of the benefits of having a bigger camera like the Sony a6400 that I'm shooting on is this type of camera does not have, you know, the auto HDR type of thing yet. That sounds like it may actually be a negative point, but I actually think of that as a positive because I don't really want that weird flickering and kind of the auto HDR kind of vibe in all of my shots. In fact, I think this looks fantastic just on its own. So yeah, the auto HDR thing is awesome on the iPhone when it works, but when it doesn't work, it looks like a pile of steaming poo. Another big aesthetic difference that I've noticed with the iPhone versus a mirrorless camera is iPhone footage looks pretty grainy to me, especially when you're doing stuff in lower light situations like what I do in my studio here. When you're outdoors, you don't really notice a lot of grain, you know, in bright sunlight type of environments, but when you're in a darker studio like we have here with, you know, artificial light and just a little bit of bounce light and that kind of thing, some of the dark areas in those videos on the phone can look pretty grainy, especially when using the front-facing camera on my 11 Pro. So here's a shot using my iPhone 11 Pro. I'm just holding it at arm's length just for the sake of comparison, but you can see how, you know, there's probably some graininess and stuff going on in the shadows over here. You know, I look pretty decent right now, but the auto HDR thing is kind of messing with shadows a little bit, bringing them up kind of a little bit unnaturally to me, but it is smoothing my face out a little bit so I look like a damn baby. But most people are just watching stuff on their phones anyway. When it comes to video, my main priority, besides it being just like fire content, is the aesthetic. I want it to look presentable on a phone. Like if it doesn't look good on a phone, it's not gonna look good anywhere else. So what are the benefits of using your phone versus using a bigger camera? The biggest benefit for me is how fun and easy it is to use, and also the ease of setup. Like with your phone, you always have it, right? So you're always ready to just like whip it out and be like, hey, I'm gonna do a vlog now. So I'm always ready to be shooting, you know, if I just have a spontaneous idea. I don't always have my mirrorless camera on me because it's kind of big, it's kind of bulky. This is in my pocket ready to go whenever I have a video idea. So the spontaneity of having a phone versus using a mirrorless camera feels more natural to me. Using a camera is awesome and the quality to me looks overall better than using a phone, but there's something like informal and accessible about using a phone. Think about it like this. Like when people come up to you and if they have like a really big camera, it can seem sometimes kind of intimidating, or you feel like you have to act a certain way because, you know, it's a bigger camera, so I gotta seem professional or whatever. But when there's a phone in front of a lot of people, they just kind of act natural and almost pretend like it's not there because phones are out everywhere. So I think our culture may be kind of like desensitized to phones maybe. And how that affects my creative process is I've noticed weirdly when I'm shooting with my phone, I feel more like my phone is my bud, you know, my phone is like my friend that I'm just having a conversation with, versus when I'm in the studio with a camera like this, the quality looks great, but it feels a little more formal and I probably maybe act a little bit, you know, I don't know if I'm as authentic or whatever on this camera versus just using a phone. It may just be a weird self-judgment, I don't know. I definitely think that having a phone kind of informalizes the process of creating for me a lot. Like you seriously just whip it out, you start pressing record and you have a video. So using a phone is convenient, it's smaller, it's compact, it's with you all the time, it feels less formal. So now that I've talked about the phone a lot, what are the benefits of using a mirrorless camera such as the a6400 instead of a phone? Well, first of all, you get a lot of different choices of lenses, so you can get a specific look that you want. You know, if you want to zoom into something and get a lot of nice juicy bokeh in the background, or if you want to have a wider shot like this and also get bokeh in the background, something you can't do on the phone as easily. So I can see what I'm doing very clearly because the a6400 has a flip up screen, and I get the benefit of choosing my lenses to get the most dramatic and best looking shot. And overall, I have more control over the image. I can choose the bitrate pretty easily. Overall, I do prefer the look and the aesthetic of using my mirrorless camera over the iPhone 11 Pro. Even though this is so convenient, it's so compact, it's always with you, it's less formal. You can attach lenses, like I have a couple moment lenses. I have the wide one, I have the telephoto lens, but typically when I'm shooting, I just want something that gets me in the moment, that gets me motivated to shoot video. I think it also has something to do with the user interface on the iPhone, where it just feels very familiar, it feels very efficient. You know exactly how to get to the app to do what you need and to adjust the settings. Especially when I'm using Filmic Pro on my iPhone 11 Pro, you can really dial in the highest bitrate and make footage look so good for a phone. And then in my recent videos, I haven't had one person be like, hey, this footage doesn't look that good, or it looks kind of grainy, you know? In fact, I've gotten more comments that are like, what are you using to shoot these videos? So it seems like some people are surprised that I am using my phone for most of my videos right now. And it's usually about convenience. It's usually about just being in the moment. It's usually about feeling less formal in the creative process, where I just feel more open to just turning on a camera, pressing record, and you're good to go. Getting a little rambly here because it's starting to get a little hot in the studio. It's not even the summer yet, it's like 100 degrees in Texas. But the benefits of using a mirrorless camera are it just looks better, it's easier to change a bunch of settings in some ways, you can dive into those menus and get the most out of your camera. It's more of a manual camera type of experience, which some people like, you know, the kind of tactile buttons and that kind of thing. I do think if you psychologically need a bigger camera to help you get in the filmmaking, video making zone, the type of equipment we use can dictate how productive we are sometimes. When the gear is really well designed, when it has a nice interface, when the quality is really good, and the mirrorless camera ticks a lot of those boxes. But for me, I don't carry my mirrorless camera everywhere because it's kind of big and clunky, so I'm kind of left to using my phone most of the time, and honestly, I'm not mad about that. And the quality, you know, it's a little grainy, the backgrounds aren't super blurry, but at the end of the day, who cares about a blurry background when it's about your personality, it's about what you put into your video, it's about the content more than it is about the gear and stuff that you use. Of course, the gear helps a lot with like lighting and sound and this and that, but for me, what it comes down to most of the time is what compels me to create. I want the least amount of hurdles to be in my gear that will push me away from actually creating things. Actually, that made me think of a point with the iPhone, which is a bit of a downfall for the iPhone too, is you have to remember, which I forget a lot, but you have to remember to turn your iPhone to airplane mode when you're shooting, because the iPhone is an iPhone, so it has a bunch of apps, and if you have a lot of notifications and stuff going on, it's really distracting. Sometimes I forget to turn off my notifications when I'm filming on my iPhone, and just one notification will show up. It'll completely take me out of the moment. Sometimes it'll even mess with the software using Filmic Pro. Like I've had certain times where the app will just crash, or it'll just completely stop filming. It'll stop the video kind of in the middle of me talking. And that stuff is not cool. So I guess what I'm trying to say here to kind of wrap it up is both of these camera systems have their pros and their cons. The iPhone is compact, it's ready to go, it's always on you, the footage looks really good, but it's not gonna be as juicy looking as a mirrorless camera in most cases, especially when you're trying to get a blurry background. And the pros of the mirrorless camera are it just looks fantastic. It is pretty small as well. It's easy to set up and you get a lot more manual controls. And of course you can switch out the lenses to get a lot of different effects in your videos. So those are some of my general thoughts about using my phone versus using a mirrorless camera. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you use your phone for all your videos or if you use a mirrorless camera or a DSLR. And let me know what camera you're using for all of your videos and what's your favorite camera that gets you motivated to create. Smash the like button, subscribe, click on that notification bell. You know what to do. Add me on Instagram. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.